Welcome to the Southern U.S. and Barber Motorsports Park for the final round of Season 2 of the Indy Pro 2000 Championship. We have traveled all over the world with these machines, and we end here at a legendary circuit. A younger circuit, only being made in the early 2000s. It drives like a very old school circuit. 15 to 17 corners, depending on who you're asking. Just a little over 2.5 miles and plenty of overtake opportunity and plenty of action. We've gone from Watkins Glen all the way to the Nordschleife and a spring break in Germany, back to the US where we've gone from Daytona to Long Beach to Laguna Seca. We had a 1-week vacation out in Spa, and now we come back here for Barber for the championship finale. Thank you for joining us on this Friday evening. My name is Jonathan Burke. Alongside me is Tom Davis. Hugo Louise in the production booth, and there is the championship standings. And right now, Ambadema putting on a whale of a show out front. Christoph Herbigno and Connor Wagner for Deadlift U4K a little bit further back, but still plenty to play for here with some of these drivers further down in this race. We have the likes of Frank Newen, Everett Paddock, David Dendelot, Mitchie and Green. They can change hands in the championship before this week is over. And I'll send it over to my colleague Tom. Tom, we have a little bit of a smaller field than I think we've been used to this season. Only 14 entries. That's just kind of how the splits worked, unfortunately. But still a really, really good field with lots of talented drivers. Yeah,
a really, really good field. On screen, Greg Seitz. He's only been at a couple races this season, but he's decided to show up for the last one. He's been the dominant force again in this particular week, although Ambadema's been putting in a good showing and a shot to try and gain that championship. And then, as we look down the rest of the list of our entries, all names you'll have heard throughout the season. Lucas Cortez, Michelin Green, Alessandro Di Tullio, Frank Newen, Maxime Cusson, Berthold, Arnoldus, Fidel Fernandez, Dave Meno, Servai Seppa, and David Dendelot. They're all people we're familiar with, so it is a top quality final week split, if you like.
I think the smallest field we've actually gotten so far this season, but it is a very high quality field, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Again, with less cars on hand, some of the guys that tend to start towards the rear of the field may be better off. Again, David Dendelot is a driver that tends not to qualify in the 7 machine, and he tends to make up a lot of places. There's Medema, I think, calling it quits on their qualifying run. David Porcelli, probably the only new name that we're a little unfamiliar with. He's been in here a couple times, running currently in the 6th position, but with 14 cars and with such a tight field as this is, and we've seen guys like Newen, who qualified down in 9th, win races. We've seen Fidel Fernandez and Arnoldus battling at the end of the top 5. Like, how crucial is this qualifying session going to be?
It is an important one because the circuit is, like you mentioned, it's new in terms of actual age, but it's an old school feeling circuit. You get to every corner and a theoretical move exists, but it's a difficult one, it's a hard one. You need to show respect between the two drivers. So if you start further up the grid, it does give you a significant advantage.
Dendelot currently rounding out the final corner, trying to go on his warm-up lap.
I love the orange wheels on Dendelot. I think we commented on this the other week, actually. It does suit the cars, goes well with the rest of the paint job, and at the moment his lap seems to be going okay. It was a little bit untidy in the first section that we saw, let the back end come out. This is where you'll see a lot of overtakes come the race. Downhill into the hairpin. Expect plenty of lockups, and that'll make opportunities. As we always say, mistakes cause good racing moments, and you'll see a lot of mistakes down the hill into turn number 5. Then you come all the way around this part of the lap. It's not any easier either. Again, you're downhill braking, this time with all sorts of curbs to contend with, and then we get really quick. You exit turn 8, listen to the engine. Flat through 9 and 10, not even a hint of a lift. He is pedal to the metal through there as David Dendelot. Here's 11 and 12. Slight lift on entry, and then flat all the way on exit as well, just maintaining the speed. You come up towards turn number 13, then it tightens all the time into 14. There's the the opportunity to try and stick your nose in there. That's the sort of half move we were talking about. Turn 15, 90-degree left-hander to round out the lap. A little bit of camber to help you out. Carry the speed onto the pit straight. Where does it put Dandelot? Well, I believe it might have been invalid, actually. So, is he going to get another shot? Well, not like that, he's not. He did a 1:19.0, which puts him a long way off the bag.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's just trying to really test out kind of the opening lap speed, getting to break in the tires. And he locked up going into one as well. So I don't think Dandelot has the intention of getting into the top 10. He's certainly just trying to test out the feel of it. Everyone else has qualified, so we can even show you the starting grid. And Greg Seitz for Rust Racing claiming pole position. Alexander DeTulio alongside him. Championship contender Ad Medema in third. Lucas Cortez in fourth. Mitchie Green, a Rust Racing teammate to Greg Seitz, in fifth. And David Porcelli in P6. Fabio Bouchard lines up in P7. Fidel Fernandez lines up P8. Frank Newman lines up P9. And Martin O'Nolis of TNT lines up P10. Maxine Costin in P11. And Savri Seppa, the Nordschleifer winner, in P12. And then David Menef and David Dandelot. Two Davids and Davids sharing the back row, but they're going to surely put on a show and try and break the way into the top 10 here today. So that's our starting grid. 24 laps around this circuit. Going to be hard to contend with. And it's going to be interesting to see how this first lap, especially the run down to turns 1, plays out.
Yeah. Like we said, the grid spot helps you a lot here because the moves are hard, they are aggressive, but you can compensate for a couple of those grid spots, maybe a slight lack of pace in qualifying. If you pick up 2 positions into turn 1, into turn 2, and it's a wide enough circuit that the opportunity will be there. Whether it's on the inside, the outside, we remain to see. It's very 50-50 on that one when you're contending with cold rear tires, cold front tires for that matter as well. But there will be a chance to try and gain a position. You know everybody's going to be looking for that, particularly Alessandro DeTulio. If you can find a way past Greg Seitz, we've seen that he can struggle in the fight sometimes, but if you let him run his race, he's got better pace than almost anybody else you will meet in this machine.
I think that's going to be the key for everyone that's starting second, third, and fourth. What can they do to try and get around the one machine? You mentioned he's been very on form this week. He started 4 races and is the only driver right now in the entire Pro Mazda Championship to have more than 2 podiums this week. That's accounting for at least more than 2 starts. So that's one machine is going to be hard to beat. But let's not leave out Amadema from this. Let's not leave out Mitchie and Green as well. They're going to be up there fighting hard. And Lucas Cortez, another Rust Racing machine. So Rust Racing versus TNT here today. It's going to be really intense on the run down to turn 1.
Yeah, we've seen this a little bit in the past. Actually, last season it was all Rust Racing. It was all Rust Racing all season. This season, TNT have come back. They've come with a fight, and Medema is in that championship hunt. And this is the perfect opportunity for Rust Racing to go, you know, this is our series, this is our crown, we're going to carry the momentum into next time out. I mentioned there was also no Delta Sport U4K drivers here this week. They have been kind of a staple. They did run the Thursday night Strength of Field broadcast, so they have gotten a decent amount of points for this week, but it might not be enough to dethrone Amadema away from the championship. And we get a full pace lap here on the run through the first few corners. It's going to be interesting to see, especially with the track conditions. Looks like the sun a little bit lower in the sky. Track might not be heating up as easily as some of these drivers may like it. So those first 2 or 3 laps could be treacherous. And there we go. Only a track temp 20 degrees Celsius. It might be a little bit sketchy, especially down into the run to Charlotte's Web. When we saw in the real life IndyCar race what happened. Before we even got to Charlotte's Web, we have a 6-7 car pileup running down into the corner. Yeah, it's exactly what we love to see. Tricky conditions. And that will allow different people to be strong. Some people will cope with it better. Other people will be a little bit more fragile when it comes to the car not behaving as they'd like it to. And as we've seen time and time again, not just in this series, but across motorsport, when you change the conditions between qualifying and the race, if it's a little bit cooler than the ideal track conditions that you'd be practicing on your own, that means that it's all going to jumble itself up throughout the course of the race, and you will be set up for plenty of overtakes and plenty of action.
Take a run out of the museum complex and now kind of onto the back straightaway area of the track. And you mentioned this is going to be flat out, and this is also going to be one of those races where we really see the difference in setups, I feel. between who runs at higher downforce, who runs lower downforce, the tire pressure setups, when the cars are going to be good, when and where. It's really a great combination of driver and car at this circuit.
Oh yeah, and you mentioned tires. There's a lot of wear goes into these tires. They are four-wheel drifting these cars in all sorts of areas, particularly these two chicanes, because you throw the front end in and you just let the rear get a little bit twitchy. You let it do its own thing. And the people who are conservative with that in the opening laps, they'll be better in the final few laps, but they may well be vulnerable in that first stage of the race.
Around the final corners, the pace car will head to the safety of pit lane for the final time this season on our broadcasted RaceSpotTV races of Indy Pro 2000. And we are green, green, green in Alabama. Greg Seitz gets an amazing jump, able to clear Tulio before they get down into turn 1. And Medema and Cortez are going to be side by side. And TNT will stand on the podium for now as Medema clears Cortez into turn 1. Tulio, though, attacking Greg Seitz immediately. He knows he can't get out to a far enough lead. They're side by side behind. That's Porcelli and Michie in green. There's the view from Fernandez. He might want to make it 3 wide into Charlotte's Web. Is he going to try a dive to the inside? No. Thinks better of it. Tulio's trying to go to the inside of Seitz ahead. Michie in green not able to clear Porcelli on that occasion. They're going to head to the museum complex where it's not ideal to go side by side, and they may try and stick it. The review of the gearbox from Greg Seitz, and right now all clean for this first half of lap 1.
Yeah, Tulio played it very good. I think there's a little bit of contact in the background there. That's the 2-car. Servery Seppa's gone round. Also involved the 9 of Dave Menno. So Seppa lost a couple of positions off the start, got involved with Dave Menno, and that's the end of that one. Here comes the contact. Oh. Just Menno not anticipating the closing speed as they break down the hill, which is not ideal. Newen at some point involved in something as well. So the 2-time race winner on our broadcast races this season, he's out. And there goes Tulio.
Tulio's around in the final corner. Thankfully doesn't hit anything, but Alexander Tulio gets back underway. Big-time kart racer out of Florida, hoping to get a Formula 4 drive this season in the United States. There's Newen. Just getting it all wrong, and that barrier just comes right at you. Big suspension damage on that machine, and then out of the final corner, Tulio just into the grass. Just that one tire in the grass sent up around.
Not even a tire, just a couple inches of rubber, but it was enough to lose the grip, and around he went. You could see what Tulio was trying to do, exactly what we mentioned at the start. Get in, disrupt Greg Seitz' rhythm. He knew how important it was, but potentially just a little bit over-eager in that opening stage.
Now we've lost. Mena is in the pits. Seppa has retired from the race. Newen is getting repairs. So we are down to just 11 cars on track. And now with Tulio out of the way, all of a sudden Medema has a clear shot at Greg Seitz and is on the attack. It was down to just over a 10th. A few sectors ago. Looks like this 5 machine is really, really good in some of these medium and slower speed corners, but here on the straight lines, this is where Greg Seitz is going to get you. He can really carry the speed out of the corners.
Yeah, the reigning champion for the remainder of this week versus the person who would be champion at the current state. We've always spoken about Greg Seitz, how he's only come to a couple races this season, how he was so dominant last time. This is Anne Medema's chance to go, do you know what? Even if you were here, I can take you. I've got the pace. The concern for Medema is that I think he needs some friends. That Fernandez is dropping through the timing order, the number 12 machine. Medema needs some friends, either in the form of his teammates or just not Rust Racing driving machines, because they are currently 1, 3, and 5. And Medema's nearest teammate is Fabio Burchell. Here's what happened to Fidel Fernandez. Just gets it all wrong. Entrance to Charlotte's Web, and that was a good job there by Arnoldus and Dendelot to really avoid that situation. That could be really bad. Yeah, clever driving actually as well from Fernandez to not end up in the grass. Kept it going as much as possible. A couple wheels onto the grass for Medema. That'll compromise the exit. Greg Seitz will take this as the opportunity to go, and there's a look down the inside of Cortez. We mentioned that on the formation lap, how you can take a peek there. You got to be bold, but Lucas Cortez has bowled in handfuls. He'll be looking absolutely everywhere here to try and make it a Rust Racing 1-2.
Now the question is Medema's car going to start fading away? He was about 2/10 behind Sainz last time by. Now all of a sudden it's almost going to a second after that little bit of an error. And see, this is also why it makes it such a driver and car track here at Barber. Just a little error like that can mean the difference in 6 or 7 tenths on a lap, and all of a sudden now Medema has to play on the defense. And we should also mention David Porcelli is going to have to be on the defense here too. Machine Green is going to come in and try and get on the podium.
Yeah, how many times have we said this? Russ Racing driver at the front, and the other two looking very aggressive and quicker than the people ahead of them. We're right on board with Lucas Cortez. Here's the section that's flat, a little bit of curve on each side. Actually a small lift, so when carrying the fuel, has to conserve the front tires. Just make sure that you don't pick up a 1X. Make sure you're not running beyond the track as Medema did a lap ago. And then you dip, and that's a huge character of this circuit, because you go down a dip, you then come back up the rise and wait for it. Now you'll start to go back down the hill again as you come through the final corner. It's always changing at this track, which makes the braking all the more difficult actually, because it's never the same feeling.
Also mentioned just like that is a flat out section with low fuel and in a qualifying condition, but for just how close Cortez would have been there, but that air is going to be off that front wing, and he may not have the downforce he needs to really contend with. That's what makes that last section so tricky when you're the car following, because you're going to lose a bit of time coming through those fast chicanes. Then once you get to the last few corners, well, you've already lost that time. It's going to be an impossible lunge, as it looks like Fidel Fernandez has again had an issue. He's auditioning to do a remake of Tokyo Drift in the last corner. Keeps it going, and David Dendelot almost got in the rear of him, and Mitchie and Green almost tried to go down the inside of Porcelli in the museum complex. That would have been bold, and that would have resulted in for sure contact.
He's got a lot more pace in his car, Ian Green, in comparison to David Porcelli ahead. Just seems like he's got more confidence. He's able to use more of the road, extract more of the performance. That is the recovering Alessandro Titulio. Was in the hunt for a race win potentially, now back up to 6th position. Next up the road, about a 1.5 seconds away, is the Mitchell Ian Green fight. So maybe this is why Ian Green wants to get a move on. They can see that Titulio is coming.
Titulio ran his fastest lap last time by, a 16.8. This lap a little bit slower, but he's been consistently 3 to 4 tenths faster than Ian Green and Porcelli, and that's going to be a fight again for the top 5. But here comes Cortez. Medema's on the defensive, defending to the inside. Is it going to be love and shine in Charlotte's way? This is not a lot of room, not a big margin for error. Cortez to the inside, and he'll pick up 2nd place. Respectful racing there from Medema. No contact, and now Rust Racing 1, 2, and 5. But Medema really wants it back, though, immediately getting the slipstream to try and make up for lost time.
Somewhat awkward there from Medema, you'd have to say, because as you mentioned, he covered the inside, but then decided to give it to his rival anyway. So Cortez will be thinking, do you know what, that's gone absolutely perfectly. Gone for the inside, and Medema's decided it's not worth the effort to defend that one anymore. Easy place for Cortez in the end. Now Medema's thinking, I'll hold on to this podium. Surely I can keep Porcelli, Green, and Titulio behind me.
I think the way of thinking was that he was going to get the later apex and get a big run down the museum complex, and they were going to be side by side, and Medema would hold the position. I didn't think he thought Cortez was going to be able to stick it so well that far to the inside of Charlotte's Web, and that just shows how well handling that 3 machine is, as now Cortez is going to try on the hunt for his teammate Greg Sainz and maybe try and steal a win away from him. So now Medema slowing up a little bit, has lost touch just a couple tenths with Cortez, but not really under threat from Porcelli. And you mentioned this. Porcelli, I think, is definitely slower outright pace than Mitchie and Green. It's just Mitchie and Green is just not fast enough at the moment to get around.
Yeah, it is an awkward spot for Ian Green because he can afford to try and force something that's not there. It's the kind of track where if you stick your nose in late, you're losing a front wing. There's no other way that that is going to play out. So for him, he's got to wait for the mistakes, see if he can pull off potentially a move on the brakes into the hairpin at turn 5, but more realistically, it is just waiting for the error from the car ahead.
Again, it depends on the setup of his race car. If he's a bit comfortable on the longer run as these tires start to wear, as the fuel starts to get burned off, maybe Ian Green is going to make a charge. If Medema's car fades and he falls right into the lap of those two. Is it then time to make the move? Because right now DeTullio is closing, continuing to close, and is getting a little bit of a slipstream down the front straightaway. That was a much better lap time for Machine Green. His fastest of the race is 16.9. DeTullio 1:16.8, his fastest of the race, but no one can go contend out with Greg Seitz up front. He ran a 16.7 last time by, so even though the gap looks stable, he's still gaining on Cortez, and Medema trying back on the inside. Medema, I think, gearing up for another lunge back at second place, and now Machine Green not close enough to Porcelli to make a dive, but maybe close enough through the museum complex. I just don't know. It's only been like a tenth or two faster, and that's just not enough to get around.
Puff of smoke from ahead, so somebody was on the limit in that Cortez-Medema fight as they came through that part. DeTullio is now very much a part of that battle for 4th position. We ride on board. This is Martin Arnoldus in another one of the TNT cars. He's following Maxime Casson, and you'd have to say somewhat similar to as we've seen from Michelin Green. Can't quite get away through, although that is a lot of curb and two very different lines at that part of the lap.
John's team is called Undercut Racing, and I'm sure he's trying to undercut as many of the curbs as possible, because
yeah,
13 car is abusing the curbs, and thankfully that suspension is still in one piece. And again, you mentioned there's DeTullio, all of a sudden he's in the fight, and Michelin Green's patience is starting to run out with the aid of Porcelli. Porcelli ran arguably his slowest lap of the race last time by a 17.4, 2 to 3 tenths slower than the guys behind him. DeTullio fastest lap of the race, a 16.5. He's going to be part of this fight. Here comes Green to the outside. Can he get 4th place? Hanging tough, hanging tough, hanging tough. No, it looks like he's going to be able to clear. Nope, not this time. They're going to go side by side in the museum complex. Oh, hang on to your seatbelts, boys. This could be ugly. DeTullio sends it down the inside. And that was very respectful from David Porcelli. There was an opportunity to shut the door and cause an accident. But great and respectful racing from all 3 of these drivers, and Porcelli losing out big time outside the top 5 now.
That was exactly the opposite of what Ian Green wanted to happen. He had to put this somewhat aggressive move on, and that meant that DeTullio just said, thank you very much, I'll follow you through. And these two are still fighting it out now on the cusp of the podium. That's for 4th position. We're still right on board with Porcelli. He is in 6th place. Do you think Porcelli could have defended that a bit more? Maybe squeeze Ian Green up onto the apex curb and have a chance of holding it around the outside? Because it was, again, it's respectful, but it's almost too respectful to give yourself a chance in a way, you know?
I think he kind of knows that the pace on that car is fading away. And I mentioned he ran his slowest lap the previous lap when he got past, and during this lap it was even slower. DeTullio jumps back to the inside, heavy on the braking. Alessandro DeTullio has no patience and time for Michelin Green. He wants to dispatch of him right here, right now. And Porcelli's going to stay in this fight. And is Porcelli going to make a move down to the museum complex? No, the 4th throws it in that corner. Aggressive is DeTullio, and I think he's driving a little bit with the red mist, right? He's kicking himself for getting loose and losing it on that last corner and throwing a potential podium away. But he's trying to make up for it here. He's right on that gearbox.
Aggressive movements from the 4 car, almost Fernando Alonso-esque, just waiting to the last second diver, potentially sticks a wing to the inside as they come up the hill through the right-hander of 13, then 14, 14A, still no opportunity. It's all about the exit here, where of course DeTullio, you feel, might be a little bit hesitant. No, of course not, he doesn't care that he's already spun there, tucked into the slipstream. A little bit of a look into turn 1, no opportunity, because Ian Green is smooth is the right word for Ian Green. He won't do anything too sudden. He'll just gently make his way around the circuit, be really careful with the power applications, and as such, getting past him, he's predictable, but it's not easy.
Leontu is going to make another dive into Charlotte's Web. Late in the braking is Alessandro DeTullio. Is there going to be contact? No. Michelin Green hanging tough on the outside, and it's going to be a drag race back down the museum complex. All right, we already saw one daring move, and Green cuts him off. It looks like Green has a bit more acceleration. And unfortunately, DeTullio has to pull back in line, not able to get around. And someone should give a note to these 3 that fighting for 4th place is going to mean losing the podium. Because while Medema and Cortez have been dropped by Greg Seitz, they're now 4 seconds away from this battle. You'd see Greg Seitz in the distance, DeTullio looking to the inside, looking outside, unable to make a move. And just also a reminder, it's only halfway through the race. They're fighting like it's 2 laps to go.
Second a lap they're losing in the best case scenario at this stage, so not ideal for these guys. But I suppose if you're in Tullio's seat, you're thinking, well, I've got to clear this guy because I've got so much more pace to use, so I've got to put the overtake in. And then they start holding each other up. You can tell they're holding each other up because behind Porcelli, Berchtold and Cosson, they're actually there or thereabouts. They're not getting any further away, and those are the sort of people that you would not expect to be on pace with Ian Green or Di Tullio at this stage.
Mitch spreading his gap a little bit larger right now as the 10 machine getting about 4 or 5 tenths maybe on Di Tullio at the moment, so no crazy dives into Charlotte's Web with the museum complex this time. And I'm wondering also, with all that aggressive moving, has Di Tullio worn out his tires, and is he's going to start to fade off here for a second? Because also keep in mind, that spin out of turn 15, that could have cost a decent amount of tire wear and temperature.
To be honest, I don't really know, is the answer, because when we were at Spa, we had a very calm race until the last couple laps when Di Tullio was in that lead fight where they're all being respectful, just passing each other on the Camel Straight maybe, but not taxing their cars or their tyre wear or any of that sorts in the rest of the lap. Now this is the complete opposite. This is the Jack Ashton drive, if you like, where he's just throwing it into the corner and hoping it sticks, and you got to feel like eventually those tires aren't going to be there. Whether it's the fronts that don't turn in or the rears that let go, we'll wait and see, but something's got to give.
And stretching his legs is the number 10 machine, able to get a 10th that time on Di Tullio, so no dive going to be made this time. Porcelli, you know, he was a bit slower, I think, than Ian Green, as it looks like Cortez and Medema are fighting it out for second place. I thought Cortez was going to be able to get away from Medema, but Medema says, no, you're not going to make this a 1-2. I want second place. And he's back for the fight for fourth.
This is exactly what we were saying between TNT and Russ Racing, isn't it? You suspect that every season that these guys are in the series of Indy Pro 2000, that rivalry is going to get a little bit more intense because it's certainly building up to be one of the true gates. That's not ideal for me, and Green bumps up over the curb. That allows Di Tullio to the inside. Easy move. Potentially a look from David Porcelli, but the door is slammed in his face. And now Di Tullio hits the front of the group. Has he got the pace that he thinks he's got?
That was brave, but forceful from Di Tullio, and I think Di Tullio realized that he had to force Mitchie and Green into a mistake, and a mistake was definitely made by the 10 machine. And oh no, what has happened to the 3 machine? He's tumbling down the order. He is in the garage. Lucas Cortez, was there contact, or is it just a little bit of an internet issue? And it looks like it's just a hardware issue. He's back in the race.
Whoa. I think my heart skipped a couple beats there. It can't be scaring me like that. That was... The gap is coming down, you're right. It is getting towards the sort of range where if Medem is particularly good in a given sector, the gap will be small enough to try a late lunge. But Medem is working very hard. Not quite able to have the consistent pace of Cortez, I don't think. It's only half a tenth here or there, but you only need half a tenth of your rival every lap, and they'll never get an opportunity to overtake you.
One of the quirks of sim racing, we always have reliable internet here at sim racing, and and I would know this. I'm unfortunately a college student paying for internet, and it's not very good internet. But meanwhile, back to the on-track action. It looks like Di Tullio might be able to put in a decently fast lap this time by. They were back down into the 16-second range while they were fighting, and it looks like now that things have kind of spread out between the 3 of them, they can get back to putting down those lap times. And that's to the dismay of Fabio Berchtold, who, again, you mentioned was catching them at a decent rate, and he might have been in that fight for a top 5 position, but it looks like for now things are going to hold station as is. Just looking up and down the order, it's Sights from Cortez, Rest Racing 1-2, TNT's Medema in 3rd. Alessandro Di Tullio started in 2nd, spun around and has recovered to 4th. Mitchie and Green in 5th, Porcelli in 6th, Berchtold is in 7th, Cosson is in 8th, Arnoldus is in 9th. Fernandez slowly trying to make up some ground after a few driver errors, and David Dendelat as well just kind of hanging out in P11. We've lost David Menno. We have lost Frank Newen. He's a couple laps down after getting to the wall, and Severi Sepra is the only retiree at the moment after losing the rear suspension of that machine at the end of the museum complex. We have 13 cars on track, 11 on the lead lap, and 9 laps to go. Interesting to see if Cortez can hold off Medema, or if any of these 3 cars that you see on screen right now in the fight for 4th really start to gain pace as the fuel load lightens.
I mentioned part of the way through, in anticipation that it would be Michelin Green was going to be hard to pass, although he ended up making a mistake, that his driving style is very smooth. You look at the back end of that car, it generally follows the front end. DeTullio is not the same. DeTullio loves to throw it in, and will have been doing so, like we mentioned. So as the race goes on, you'd expect the pace to go the way of Ian Green. The question is whether or not that change is enough for him to start to hold the gap back in.
Pointed out towards the top of the broadcast, cooler conditions here for Barber, or at least for a Alabama-style day. Normally it's pretty hot out there. Normally we're seeing 80, 90 degrees, but we're just hovering around the 60s and 70s right now, Fahrenheit-wise, 20 degrees Celsius. So these tires may not be going away as quickly as we might expect. As well, again, we've talked about it, it's a newer circuit, but an old-school circuit, so the tire wear isn't too bad, as Porcelli may want revenge on Michelin Green. Mitch may be looking in his mirrors and driving a little defensively at the moment and letting DeTullio get away from him. So 17 complete. Porcelli looking to the inside, unable to do it in turn 1. He's going to be able to do it in the run down to 3 and 4. Not on this occasion, but Porcelli would like to be back in the top 5. He's going to get a huge draft down on the run to Charlotte's Web. Michelin Green defensive on the inside. Porcelli going to take the long way around. That's a bold move from the number 8 machine. Almost a little bit of contact, a little bit of drifting from Porcelli. Unable to get the move done, but it's compromised Michelin Green's exit. Here come the 2 competitors for the top 5. Is Porcelli going to make a move in the museum complex? No, thinks better of it. No lockup, at least, from the 10 machine. But Porcelli knows he's gonna have to make a move sooner or later, or even force Michelin Green to make a mistake. Ian Green now getting away a little bit. Here comes Porcelli closing back in. This has allowed DeTullio to get away in a comfortable 4th position, and there again, we've mentioned him a lot. Fabio Berchel, that yellow and black TNT machine in the distance. These 2 continually fight, and all of a sudden, it's going to be Berchel maybe getting in the edge of the top 5. No move that time for Porcelli. He was thinking about it. He was closing in. I think he's going to do the same thing here as DeTullio, just kind of wait it out, wait for a mistake maybe from this 10 machine. A big draft down this straightaway into the museum complex. Not on this occasion. Porcelli backs out a little bit. You see the puff of smoke there. That's DeTullio trying to get as much time back as possible. He's pretty far back from Medema. Cortez and Medema still fighting hard for 2nd place, but at the moment, as we mentioned before, it is an all Greg Seitz show out front. Michelin Green is trying to hang on at the moment to get all 3 of the Rust Racing entries in the top 5. He's got Porcelli in his mirrors. And Fabio Berchel, you can see him rounding the corner as well, not too far behind. Another lap complete on the run down to the front straightaway. Not close enough this time for Porcelli. This is the closest battle on track besides the 2nd place one. Cortez and Medema still 2 and 3, although that has yet to change hands in the recent laps, besides from the occasional internet blip and a little sideways there from Porcelli. Those rear tires are starting to go away, I think, on some of these race cars, and Porcelli maybe just getting impatient as well with the Pennsylvania native of Ian Green in front of him. And don't make too many mistakes. Again, We got a TNT racing machine right behind. A little bit of a lockup there from the 10. That's not going to help him either. De Tulio, the Florida native, going to drive away. A comfortable 4th position. He's got 4 seconds to make up on Medema, but 4 seconds in 5 laps, just not possible. He's running a 1/10 of a second faster. Corselli back down to the inside. He's looking inside and out. A little bit of a tighter line there from Michelin Green. Corselli trying to use that banking to get a run down to the final corner. Thinks better of it. They're going to come across the line with about 4 to go this time. Michelin Green has a little bit more of a gap. Cortez 3/10 in front of Medema, but it's all Greg Seitz, as we mentioned, out front. 6 seconds in the lead, and he's clicking off fast lap after fast lap. 2 laps ago, he ran a 16.3, which is 3/10 faster than any of his competitors on the racetrack, including his teammates. Brilliant pace from the one machine. Putting on a
mind-numbingly fast. Like, just uncomprehendibly quick is Greg Seitz. I'm finding it really interesting because you remember we were speaking about Michelin Green and how he should be good on his tyres. Do you think his stint behind David Porcelli trying to find a way through has actually hurt his front too bad? Has he been struggling with the understeer and the fast parts? Because David suddenly seems like the guy who's managed his tyres well, and it's Ian Green who's struggling relative to the cars around him.
I'm wondering also with that fight with the Tulio, has there been too many lockups? Because we noticed those little puffs of smoke that we've been seeing on our screen, and some of those have been coming from that 10 machine. A decent amount. Same with the 5 of Medema, as you can see Cortez getting ridiculously defensive now. I think he knows his car is fading away a little bit. He's swerving to the inside to break the toe. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Michelin Green has maybe burned up the tires here a little bit in defense of Tulio, or maybe he's just not as good in clean air as he is behind someone in the slipstream. Maybe Michelin Green is set up for a packed field of 20 cars and having to work his way through the field. Not a race where he's essentially kind of all by himself with one other driver 4 seconds from the nearest car.
Yeah, this is the kind of race where you want your Greg Seitz setup, really, isn't it? Given that they share the team, give him a little call. Be like, hey, Greg, what setup do you use when you're running on your own at the front? Because that's the sort of thing I'm going to need. Here's Medema's view, looking to put the nail in the coffin, if you like, in the championship. It got a small championship lead, the sort of championship lead that could yet be overturned. But a good result here, and you go a long way towards securing that one. So that'll be in Anne's mind. The knowledge that, sure, a P2 would be better than a P3, but P3 is not bad, given them already in the front.
But I think he feels like Cortez's car is not better than his, because Cortez got around the number 5 machine of Medema, but just hasn't been able to get away. And Cortez is continuing to drive defense, and I'm wondering if he's worried in these last 2 or 3 laps that Medema is going to come with an angry charge. And I would be a little bit concerned as well if they start fighting within the next lap or 2, because we've mentioned De Tulio. It's not impossible for the 4 car to get on the podium. It's very unlikely. It would have to take these 2 fighting in a potential contact, I think, for the Florida native in the white machine. There you can see him in the rear to get onto the podium. Porcelli's still trying to fight to get back 5.
Oh, that's a mistake. That's a pretty big mistake. Is this going to allow Medema a bit of a run? Unfortunately not. Here's a brilliant battle developing between Martin Arnoldus and, you guessed it, Fidel Fernandez. He's had plenty of camera time here this evening. Arnoldus got past just a little moment ago. Now he's looking to fight back towards the museum complex. You'd have to be very, very brave or very, very stupid to have a look there. However, Fidel Fernandez doesn't use all the road in that part, and that might just hand a little bit of the advantage to Arnoldus, even if it's only psychological, going, he's not comfortable with his car over those bumps. Let's put him on one.
I saw Cortez using all the road and more. Now Medema all of a sudden. Now to Charlotte's Web, a lot closer is the TNT machine. We have 2 TNT machines looking to get around 2 other machines. Cortez being very, very defensive, swerving all the way to the outside, trying to get a big run out of Charlotte's Web. And here's Arnoldus looking to the inside of Fernandez. Nothing doing on this occasion. Going down to the turn 1. And can Medema get Cortez into the museum complex? And that 4 car is getting slowly bigger. Again, don't think Tullio can stand on the podium, but if these two start fighting, it's possible.
Gap is coming down, even without them fighting. It's the sort of track where if you go wheel to wheel through a corner, you'll lose coming on a second, maybe 7-8 tenths. So they do that through a couple corners. Tullio's right there. I mean, he's seen that he's quite happy to put an aggressive move on people if that's what the situation requires. So as you say, don't count him out yet. It's a long shot, but he is close enough if it starts to all pop off.
Perez was a little bit sloppy in that last corner. We got the white flag. Seitz has already collected it. He's off into 1 and 2 already on this final lap. What is going to be the results for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th? It's been a long road throughout this season. There's been plenty of good battles, and I'm glad we get to end it with 2 fantastic battles for the top 5. As here comes Medema, championship contender. Can he get to the inside of Lucas Cortez? Rust Racing Machine, aggressive on the brakes as Medema. A big lockup going through Charlotte's Web, but Cortez also made a mistake, unable to get around him. As you can see on our timing screen, Porcelli and Green are flipping back and forth as they head into Charlotte's Web now. Down the inside comes Medema into the museum complex. Not on this occasion. He's cut off by Cortez, who cuts the track. He may have to slow down for a possible time penalty if he's not careful. They're side by side on the right side of the screen. Porcelli and Green. Green goes around, gets into Porcelli. They're stopped on the track. And Berchtold is going to be coming up the road shortly. Here comes Medema, and Tullio is not far behind. If those two get into it, Tullio could collect a podium. But while all the craziness is going on, Greg Seitz is going to see none of it. He clears the field and will win at Barber Motorsports Park. Who's getting second, Cortez or Medema? Tullio is trying his darndest to get to the line quick enough. And if not, I don't think that's going to happen. Here comes a lunge. That's actually down in the first corner. I think Cortez was able to get Medema. And of course, Porcelli able to get Michelin and Green. Berchtold was so close and yet so far. That may be the frustration crash for Michelin and Green. Right there. Yeah. It was a hard-fought fight.
Yeah. That's the I don't want to be here anymore crash. Here's a few of this is the outside of the top 10. Fidel Fernandez did manage to get Martina Arnoldas. Both, at least one of them goes flying into the wall at the end. And donuts from the 3 car. Lucas Cortez very happy with his podium.
I think it's a little celebratory sends into the first corner. Just happy to make it to the end of the season and maybe ending it with a big bang, or at least figuratively and actually a big bang. So Greg Seitz for Rust Racing will take the win. Lucas Cortez in second. Medema, he had 2 or 3 lunges, and again, a mistake. And look how close Tullio got. Only a 1.5 seconds away from Medema. So a good drive recovery-wise for Tullio. David Porcelli and Michelin Green, they were side-by-side through the museum complex. I thought for sure that A-car had to slow down. Didn't have to. Ends up in front of Michelin Green. Fabio Berchtold in 7th. Maxime Constant in 8th. Fidel Fernandez fighting with Arnoldas at the end to get 9th and 10th. David Dendelot, a little bit off the pace, almost lapped by our leader, Greg Seitz. He finishes in 11th. David Bennett 1 lap down, and Frank Nguyen 3 laps down after hitting the outside wall. Boy, it would have been interesting to see how he would have played out in some of these fights for the top 5. And Severi Seppa, unfortunately, suspension damage, retiring early to the Finnish driver. He finished in 14th. So it's been a long road, Tom, after a long season, 3 ovals, 9 road courses. It ended here at Barber, and it ended in a really good, spectacular fashion. It's a shame it wasn't the fight for the lead, for the win that I think we were looking forward to, but it was a great fight for 2nd and for 4th place.
It's a brilliant fight. Here's a little replay of what happened to Nguyen. And like you mentioned, big shame for Frank. I think he could have been involved in that hunt for P4. Then we started to get a few of the big players emerging. Fidel Fernandez was looking as if he had plenty of pace, but this was the first of 2 spins for the 12 car, which you've got to say, not going to help you with your overall race time. Is this going to be the second one straight away? Yes, it is. Not a broadcast to watch back for Fidel in this respect, but we also saw a couple good moves, so pros and cons. Frank Nguyen was recovering for most of the time, showed good pace, and then we started to get some real excitement from Nel Fernandez. Martin Arnoldus going at it as much as you like. It was Vidal who just about came out on top, but Martin put up a really nice fight, particularly to the outside of Turn 5, Charlotte's Web. Try and get a run towards the museum complex, but unfortunately not quite far enough alongside. And here was the fight of the day. Medema, potential champion, although we'll wait that to be confirmed. Down the inside, couldn't quite make it stick on Cortez, but I bet Cortez had a little bit of a bum clench moment, shall we say, where everything tenses up and you're just thinking, please don't hit me, please don't hit me. It's exactly what was happening with these two as well. Except this time they did tap Michelin Green, too much inside curve, loses the rear end, comes all the way across into the 8 car. Not ideal for those guys, but ultimately they didn't lose position to somebody else, and David got ahead of Michelin anyway. Throughout all of that, a dominant performance once again from Greg Seitz. He's not been in the championship hunt this year, other commitments coming into it, all that sort of stuff that's relatively boring, but when he showed up, he showed that he's still got exactly what it takes to be a force to be reckoned with. If he's around next season, the other drivers are in trouble. But there's a few who will think that they can take it to him. And Medema, Christophe Hervigno, Alessandro Di Tullio, another big one, of course. What could it have been? Those two could have been fighting to the end. But it's simply checker flag was waving, and tell you what, you got a few good views, did that man today. A little bit of a celebration from Seitz as well. He's happy with that one, rightfully so. He pulled off exactly what he wanted, survived the pressure in the early couple of laps, forced the mistake from Di Tullio, which he's so good at doing. Consistency is Greg Seitz's middle name, and he'll force you to do your personal best lap time every single lap, and ultimately Di Tullio couldn't match it, and as the race played on, neither could Seitz's teammate Cortez nor potential champion and Medema. Came in with the championship lead, finished in 3rd place on the podium. You'd say that sets up Anne very, very well here in the 2nd season of 2021. Well, that's just about that. That's our season. That's Indy Pro 2000 all concluded for this season here in 2021. As we say, championship yet to be officially concluded, but Anne Medema is looking very, very likely for that one. So congratulations to them. But until next season, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We'll see you around. We got Friday night primetime. We got all sorts of action here on RaceSpotTV. So make sure you get on the social, get on YouTube, hit the bell, and we'll see you for a race in the very near future. Have a good one, guys.